Well, hello, welcome to another episode of Embrace Live. Actually, I was just, whilst the countdown was on, I was just checking to see how many episodes we've done, and this is actually the 15th episode, so 15 weeks worth of Embrace Live. So well done if you've stuck with us for all of that time. Very welcome if you're kind of just dipping in for tonight. I just want to say a few things. Just firstly, let me introduce myself. Obviously, my name is Dave Dixon. I have the privilege of going to and being part of the team at Embrace Church in Darlington, and Embrace Live really is kind of a response to increasing online presence, obviously due to COVID and things like that and lockdown. But we felt it's a great way to be able to communicate, to share a little bit about Embrace Church, but actually go wider than that. And that's what I love about this series in particular, that we are looking about what's God's church up to, church with a capital C, because I say each time there's only one church, and that's God's church. And there's just different flavors for different settings and communities and people and so on. Again, it's great that you can kind of tune in, and like I said, we've done a number of series over the kind of the 15 weeks we've been going. So we started off with kind of a My Story series, hearing people's stories about how they came to make that decision to meet Jesus and kind of follow Jesus and dedicate their lives to Jesus. And so we did a series of that. Then we did a kind of mini series on worship leaders. Again, that's something that I'm involved in leading worship, which is, when we often talk about that in church circles, it means the musical aspects. But worship is a lifestyle. But often, music and is a great way to bring people together and to worship God in one way of doing that. All right. And then for the last few weeks after the kind of summer break, we had a little bit of a kind of holiday break. We've been looking at and meeting, and actually, I'm really privileged. Just pretty much what I've done is got my buddies together that I've known and got to know for over many years, from churches all around the Northeast and beyond, really. So I'm really excited about this particular series, which we're calling Leaders of, so people who are leading, not necessarily churches, although tonight I'm really, really pleased that actually we've got a legend that is Mr. Stephen Sutton. I'm looking at him on my other monitor over here. That's what I keep doing, and he's smiling. So there we go. No pressure. I've just described you as a legend, Stephen. So we'll say hello to you in a moment. But there we go. But not only leads a church, Copenhagen Baptist Church, and we'll be hearing a little bit about that, but also is involved in many things about bringing the church together in lots of different things in unity. I don't want to steal his thunder, but he's again very instrumental in doing that. So I'm really looking forward to tonight's kind of session. Just to say hello to a few people who've joined us online. Margaret, I think, has been with us for the full 15, just about. Thanks, Margaret, for joining us tonight as well. Hannah, it's great to have you with us. And we've got Richard joining us as well, which is great. He's loving the show already. He's just sent a love heart through. There we go. So thanks for joining us. Let me just quickly head over to Stephen and just give us a quick hello, and then we'll do the kind of opening, and we'll kind of get going for tonight. So here we go. Mr. Stephen Sutton, are you well?
I'm good, thank you, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. Hello to everyone who's joining us, and people who are watching it later as well. Hello, yeah. Good to be with you.
Okay, well, so we'll get going in a moment, Stephen. We'll just kind of bring you back in, but I'm just going to do a little opener, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty, and we'll just have a bit of a chat, if that's all right, if that works.
Brilliant, definitely.
Okay, mate, nice one. All right, so like I said, this series is all about people who are organising different organisations, leading them in different ways, charities, events, and so on. And like Stephen said there, if you've missed previous episodes, if you want to go to the Embrace Church Facebook page, you can catch them on there, or our YouTube channel. They're available on there as well. So feel free to kind of dip in and so on. And the reason why we're doing this, in particularly this series, is to show you just how many opportunities there are and how many great organisations, Christian church-based organisations, doing wonderful things in the community, and how you can get involved. So again, that's what we want to kind of talk about a little bit tonight as well. So without kind of going any further, let me just kind of hit the leaders intro, and then we'll have a chat with Stephen. Brilliant. All right. Okay. So, no pressure at all. I've described you as a legend already, Mr. Sutton. And I was just must admit, I was looking at that opener again, and just those words that come up: leader, pace setter, innovator, shepherd. You know, in my opinion, mate, obviously, I think you tick all of those boxes. So, you know, I'm bigging you up big style here. But,
You're
you know,
very kind.
you're very
Yeah.
welcome. It's all honesty and it's all true because, you know, again, the times that we've met over a number of years in different settings and stuff like that, I just, you know, I know that you're an absolute man of God, and it's great to watch, you know, through the medium of social media and things like that. Really, just, you know, what the great things happen at Colby Baptist and transforming Teesside together. All right, as well as kind of movement day. So those are the kind of three, if you like, different areas I want us to kind of chat about tonight. Really, if that's okay, mate.
Definitely. No, I'd love to. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be absolutely great. Yeah, they're all my
and
favourite topics.
great. That's all right then. That's good. And then obviously I've primed you, Stephen, a little bit on this one. We want to make this session, as always, interactive. So if you've got a question or a comment and things like that, please just pop it into, you know, the chat, and then I can put it on screen and we can share that with everybody. And, you know, if you've got questions, please make them as difficult as possible, because Stephen's dying to answer those for you. And we'd like to grill our guests as much as we can, all right? But no, honestly, it'd be great if people make it an interactive, and then it's just not me kind of rattling on, because I can do that. I'm a teacher, you see, so I can rattle on quite easily for a long time, but I'm going to try and avoid that. So, Stephen, tell us a bit about, first of all, who you are, and you know, how you came about. A little kind of a bridge version of how you became a Christian, and a bit of your story in that side of things, if that's okay, mate. Just to put you into context.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. So I am the son of a Baptist minister, actually.
Oh yeah.
From over Manchester. I was actually born in London, but then we moved to Manchester when I was about 2 years old.
Yeah.
And so I'm a proud Mancunian, and I keep my London heritage a secret.
Okay, so let's go City or United. Which one?
United, actually.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
I was brought up in a very red area, and also my dad was the chaplain at Old Trafford when I was growing up. So I had no choice. It was
Right.
red
okay.
or nothing. Right?
Yeah.
Grew up in a Christian household. It was a strange upbringing, I guess, because it was my dad was the leader of probably one of the largest churches in the country at the time. So this is before the mega church phenomenon. There was only kind of large churches within London, really, and Altrincham Baptists my dad led for 25 years, and that was about 1,000 people at one point.
Wow.
And so this sort of strange environment, a very vibrant church, lots going on. Dad, a minister, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're all sorted, does it? So I was one of those typical rebellious ministers' kids, and I went back and forth with God, and had some amazing times as a child and as a teenager where I'd go on Christian conferences and we'd have great youth workers, and I'd give my life to Christ, and I'd go back on a Sunday on a Monday morning to school and do what I want and kind of live however I like. So very much a back and forth relationship with God for a very, very long time. But really it changed when I was about, I think it was about 16, 17. And I think I just got sick of the back and forth nature of it. And I kind of said there was a whole load of my friends in our youth group that had a real profound experience of the Holy Spirit, and it just wasn't happening for me. Right. And I was like, "What, God? Do you even want me? Are you really real?" And so I gave God an ultimatum. And I said, I'm going to give you 1 week, God. I'm going to give you 1 week, and it either works for me and you prove yourself to me, or else I'm done and I'm going my own direction. And so for a week, I fasted TV and didn't watch. 16 years old, didn't watch TV for a full week, and I decided I was going to pray and read the Bible during that week. And I did it, and over the course of that week, everything changed.
Wow!
It really did. It wasn't. It wasn't. I've not got one big zap moment, but I can tell you over the course of that week, God became real to me, probably for the first time properly in my life, and I suddenly all of the words that we'd been singing in church since a kid suddenly started making sense, and scripture started leaping out off the page to me, and it got me excited.
Yeah.
And yeah, my life changed during that week, really, and from that point onwards, it wasn't all the perfect run after that, but actually, I knew from that point onwards. I was giving my life to Christ, and the only question I was asking for my future was, what does Jesus want me to do?
Wow.
And so that was kind of the journey from there, and that led me into mission. Spent some time on the mission field in Cambodia, and then I spent a couple of years in Nepal when I left school and started church planting out in Nepal, which was an amazing time. While I was there, really felt that God was calling me into long-term ministry back in the UK. So
Fantastic.
Came back to Manchester, spoke to my church, and said, "I think I want to become a minister." And they started the process with me in the Baptists.
Oh yeah.
And during that time, I met my wife, and we got married very quickly. We met, fell in love, proposed to her 3 months later, and we got married 7 months after that.
Wow.
So,
you didn't mess about.
No, well, she's a very beautiful woman, and if I'd waited too long, then I would have regretted it. So I locked it down pretty fast with an engagement ring. And then the Baptist process involved working in a kind of number of Baptist churches in Manchester for a while, but then it involved moving down to London, where we trained at Spurgeon's College, which was a great experience. Studied theology, worked in a very traditional Baptist church for the first time in my life, down in London. Just wonderful experience. Really loved studying theology. Started to, my passion for the Bible just grew and grew and grew. And then when you leave college, you start hunting for God. What church do you want me to go to?
Yeah.
And we've not got time to go into that, but it is a long story. But in the end, God really, very clearly, amazingly led us to Middlesbrough, to Colby Newham Baptist Church.
Come on, absolutely.
And the rest is history. And I've been here now, Dave, for 11 years. Last week, 11 years last week it was.
As long as that?
Yeah, a long, long time now.
Yeah. So how's it going over at Colby? How's it going over at Thanks. I mean, that's great. How's it going over at Colby Baptist then? It's what's life like there?
Yeah, do you know what? It's going really, really well by the grace of God, because it has been a tough couple of years. It really has. Yeah. For churches, it has been really hard. When you're a community that thrives off of being together. As you guys would have experienced exactly the same, and then suddenly you're not allowed to. It's been incredibly hard, and so it's been a real battle the past couple of years. We've also not just had the pandemic; we've had lots of cases of cancer and ill health and dementia with some of our members. We've had just all sorts hit us all in a couple of years. It actually felt like a very difficult couple of years for us, but God's been so good, and the church is we've processed it, we've gone through it. The church is feeling healthy. We're growing. We're doing outdoor services, and whenever we can, we're still live streaming online. We've got most of our people back now, which is good. A few left to come. But no, we're in a good place. We're in a good place, but it's by no means been an easy journey the past couple of years. It's been tricky.
Yeah, wow. Obviously, it was tough enough with the pandemic and, obviously all of that, but to have those additional, health issues, serious health issues and things like that, wow, it seems like, it's good to hear that you're kind of coming out the other side and like you say, things are healthier in that sense and so on. So just how many come along to now, kind of Colby? How big is it as a church? And I know not everybody turns up on the same week, they never do, but roughly,
Yeah, we're probably about 60 or 70 on a Sunday morning, but which puts us as probably just shy of 100 people as a church family, really.
Great.
So yeah, it's good numbers. But my vision for Colby has always been that would be a church that multiplies. So in my head, I've always had it that if we grow to 120 sort of regular members, then we'll send people out and we'll plant churches and and do that sort of thing. We're very much a community church.
Yeah.
I don't think we really have a calling to be a large gathering church, like some churches do actually. And so what we're looking at, is this sort of, let's grow to a sort of good size that's got some capacity and some good leadership within it, and then let's multiply it and let's see other parts of Middlesbrough and Teesside. Because there's whole areas of Teesside when you start looking at the map where actually there's not many vibrant churches at all, and so we want to see church planting be a major agenda across Teesside over the next few years.
Absolutely. It's an interesting story for me here, because I'm a borough lad. I was born in the borough, as they say. Raised in Stockton. Apart from going away to university, I've spent most of my life living in Stockton, and for a lot of the time I've been involved in various things in churches and organisations. Mainly in Stockton, really, in the Stockton Middlesbrough area. So for me, I live in Hartburn, if you know the area, and just next to the A66. So for me, I was very much, I'd go to the A66 and turn left, Stockton, Middlesbrough, and everything, But a few years ago now, God kind of prompted me, through wonderful people over at Embrace and getting to know them in different ways, and again, like seeking God, like you said in your story about where do and God very much prompted me to kind of, now's the time to turn right on the 66 over to Darlington, so I'm, we're a small church, Embrace Church, but again, it's a vibrant church and we're growing, and obviously, like yourself, we've found things challenging during the pandemic, but it's great to see that actually things are starting to happen in Darlington. From what I've seen, I'm sure things have been happening for a long time, but as I'm getting to know more and more people, and certainly there's a great sense of an occasion of kind of one voice Darlington, they call it, coming together in that unity that I know that you have been, you're passionate about and been instrumental and certainly part of, that transforming Teesside. I'm still having those discussions, really, because I've been to the Transforming Teesside Together kind of meetings and things like that, the celebrations and the huge celebrations pre-COVID that we held, that were held at the Oakwood Centre, for example. What an amazing kind of night those were of worship and just to hear the church and everything and organisations, what they're doing. And I'm messaging, Alan and Tony, who lead out, the Embrace Church, saying, you should be here, but is this, I'm asking a question, is this Teesside or is it Tees Valley? I don't know how it works in terms of the map and things like that, really. Where's the, because it's almost like no man's land, it seems, when you turn right in the A66 before you get to Darlow and beyond.
Yeah, there is. I mean, whenever you're dealing with unity movements, and this is a phrase that's come about over the past few years, is unity movements, not just ecumenical churches that work together, but actually a movement for unity. Geography actually is one of the most complex things, is you can't actually just look on a map and say, oh, that's a neat area, we're going to do unity there. Yeah. There seems to be a real balancing act of actually what area is a cohesive mission field. Yeah. And so we're doing Teesside, but the reality is that it's mainly Stockton and Middlesbrough churches that are relating to each other, with a few from Billingham and a few from Redcar, East Cleveland area. But actually, and obviously we're very good friends with all you guys in Darlington as well. And in fact, I'm speaking at the leaders' lunch you've got there in a couple of weeks' time over in Darlington to come and meet you all and see what's going on. But I think there's definitely something going on Tees Valley wise, though, isn't there? Because the fact that the combined authority is getting more and more authority and power and more funding to make influences across the whole region is an interesting development, and I think it will need conversations as to what parts of unity works really well across a whole combined authority that goes up to Hartlepool, out to Darlington and across to Redcar, and actually what needs more localised relational unity as well. So it is a complex point that you've just hit on there, Dave, and I think we just got to see where God leads us with it.
Absolutely. I mean, like I say, I'm still learning. Obviously, prior to kind of lockdowns and things like that, I was kind of saying, asking the question, well, I've been involved in things. I've attended events and unity events of different kinds of things, and I'm kind of saying, what's happening? Openly. I'm not saying it isn't, but what's happening in Darlow? What's happening in this kind of area? Now I'm on the turn right. And clearly, I mean, again, in terms of unity, to see the One Voice Darlington stuff, doing the huge carol service and the outdoor services over at the Darlow Stadium was immense. It really is, and I know. Obviously there's a lot of churches meeting together to pray, online and things, and that unity is happening. I love that unity movement, definitely. I'm all for that. That gives definitely a big tick from me in that sense. So just let's talk. Can we talk? I mean, you're amazing in your leadership of Colby Baptist and lots of things now. Let's talk about the Transforming Teesside Together. Let's call it that unity movement. Then, can you give us a bit of a history, Steve, about how it kind of came together? What's the purpose from that point of view?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it does fit in with Colby as well. In that when I first moved to Teesside, my calling was very much to that single church. Yeah. That's the way it works. Is you're a pastor and you're called to pastor that church, and that church has called you to pastor them, and that's the dynamic. It's you and the church. But actually, within about a year and a half, 2 years, I really began to question that actually, wow. And God really started to speak to me about how the fact actually He's not called me to Colby Newman Baptist Church. He's called me with Colby Newman Baptist Church to the land that He's placed me in, Teesside. And I started to really realise that my mission here and the call on my life here wasn't actually just look after these people and pastor these people, disciple them, and then move on to another church. There was something particular about the land of Teesside and the geographical location that He'd placed me in, and really started just getting a burden for it and a heart for it, and reading the articles, trying to study it a bit, work out how this land works, some of the problems and issues that it faces, and then start finding out about the church that's placed here in Teesside. Because the thing is, as soon as you decide, I think God's got a mission and He wants to transform the whole of Teesside, and then you begin to realize, actually, I can't do that by my own ministry. And I can't even if I grow a really good church, I'm not going to make much of a dint, actually. What we need thousands of Christians who are scattered all over the place, who have different churches and different gatherings, different worship services, but are also placed in different job networks, different areas and spheres of society here in Teesside. Now, if you've got that, if that's your team, then you've got something you can work with. And I think I began to realize that's exactly what we've got. That very thing. That's what God's got. Like, God's got a mission to transform Teesside for the kingdom of God. He wants it to look more like His kingdom. He wants His will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. And He's placed a team here to do it. The Bible's so firm on this, about our oneness, about us being, even the language of brothers and sisters. We take this for granted as if it's some kind of nice holy language. Oh, Dave, you my brother. It's not. That's like family language. Dave, you're my brother. Like you're like, God's your dad, therefore He's my dad, and you're my brother. And so if we're also placed on mission in the same land, then that surely means we've got to work together. So a whole load of this was me logically thinking it through. The stuff that you said at the beginning of Big C Church. We are one church. It's not just all different churches. Yeah. A lot of people are happy saying that. But what would happen if we really believed it? Like, what would happen if we really started acting like it? And I think it was that question that really started to bug me, and we started talking with other leaders about it, and then started meeting other people around the country, and who were also burned by the same question, and who were ahead of us. And actually, what had happened was, we always had in Middlesbrough a little vicar's tea party round at Eric Wilson's house in St. Barnabas. He was the vicar at St. Barnabas for many years, which is a large church in the centre of Middlesbrough. Yeah. And he does have all the local vicars round for a tea party once every 3 months. And you talk about the price of funerals and the price of your church roof breaking, and it was very, very dull and didn't have much to it. And one time we just so happened to have a visitor up from York, and this guy from York said, hey guys, how often do you pray together? And we said, well, I reckon, once every 3 months we get together and we pray for a solid 6 or 7 minutes at the end of talking. And he said, no, in York we pray together every single week, and we have done for 20 years.
Wow.
And he said we now have about 70% of all the churches in York that have a representative and their leaders pray together. And I still remember the moment where it was like the Holy Spirit just entered the room, and there was only about 6 or 7 of us there, and we all looked at each other and said, we've got to do this. God's telling us to do this. And so this was 9 years ago now, Dave. Yeah. Wow. And so we decided to copy York, and we started to pray together every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. And we've been doing that now for 9 years, and we carried on online over the pandemic as well. Yeah. And in fact, just on this Tuesday just gone, was that just yesterday? It's been a long day today. Yeah, just yesterday we had our first one back in person. And it was so good to have people together.
Yeah. And I saw the pictures online. I saw the pictures on Facebook.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, but honestly, it's grown. At first, it was just 6 of us and different traditions, and we had to learn how to pray together. We had to learn about each other's kind of differences, the different language that we used. It was slightly awkward, but over time, we just grew to love each other, and new people came in. Some people we said goodbye to, and it had this effect of really starting to take the words that we all believed, that we are one church, and it started to turn it into an emotional thing. Like, no, we are one church, and we are brothers and sisters, and actually we should have each other's backs, and actually I care about you, and actually I'm not in competition with you, because to be honest, that is the stark reality for many, many years, is that churches have often seen each other in competition with each other. They would never say that out loud, but that is the reality. And I was in that place as well, is that when I first moved here, if there was a church down the road that was growing, I'd probably secretly be like, oh man, why are they growing? Why are we not growing? Why is that not happening for us?
Yeah.
But do you know what? When you spend years and years and years praying for another church, and that church then starts growing, I tell you what, that's suddenly your victory. You just love it. You're like, that's amazing. That's my victory. I've been praying for that to happen. And you get really excited about it. And the opposite's true as well, is that sometimes when a church goes through a hard time down the road, you can kind of sit there a bit smugly and think, it's not happening here. At least we're doing better than them. But when you've been praying for that church and you've been friends with the leaders of that church, then suddenly it hurts you. And you're like, oh no, that's a loss to the kingdom of God. That's a damage to our team. And you begin to view each other like teammates. And to be honest, the analogy of a football team is just spot on for this. It really is.
Yeah.
Because it's suddenly like God woke me up to the fact that he'd placed me on a football pitch, and he'd not put me there alone. But actually, there were a bunch of other teammates there, and they were all wearing the same colour shirt. And they all were listening to the same captain, and they were all trying to score in the same goal, but nobody had ever really spoke to each other or got to know each other before.
Wow, yeah.
So it was just that sense of, hey, well, if we are a team and God's placed us here together, let's start acting like it. So it was really simple. At first, it was just prayer meetings, Dave, and then we started connecting the dots to the fact that God was doing the same over in Stockton as well, and the leaders over there, and we were like, do you know what? There's only a river between us. This is silly. Yeah. So we started linking up with them. We started doing leaders' lunches, which pre-pandemic, they were just, I'm mourning the pandemic so much, because there were so many good times. But we used to about once a month get 70 church leaders together. Wow. So, I mean, actually get your head around that. Like 70 odd churches represented, and you're talking the bishop of the Anglican Church. You're talking Catholic priests, independent churches, Pentecostals, Baptists, Methodists, New Frontiers, Salt and Light. The full spread of churches getting together, having lunch together, praying for each other, hearing each other's difficulties. And then our aim was actually, we brought strategy to it as well, Dave. We decided at one point that our relationships are good, but actually, surely this has got a purpose to it. Is we want to know each other, but actually, it's got to be good for the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And so we tried to talk strategy, like yeah. I mean, what's going on church planting wise across Teesside? If one church decides, we're going to church plant, but not talk to any other churches, which has been the reality for many years, you end up, well, firstly, you end up with hurt feelings, you end up with messiness, you end up with people all wanting to plant churches in the same areas, and there's no strategy to it. So you can, if you know each other, you trust each other, you can have conversations. How are we going to tackle poverty together? Do we need 10 different food banks, or do we need one food bank that works together? Or do we need 10 different asylum seeker ministries, or actually do we need to collectively gather some of the asylum seeker people in our churches who have got that ministry and say, guys, how do we run with this?
Yeah.
So those sorts of ideas, it's just, but it's very, very simple, Dave. It just takes this idea of, if we are one church, then actually, if we really believed it, how would it play out? And I actually think the possibilities are limitless when you start thinking of the church of an area as your church, not just your local church. Then it changes the answers that you come up to with all sorts of things. And so out of that has been birthed all sorts, which is wonderful. And it doesn't all come under the banner of transforming Teesside together, because the aim actually wasn't for us. We didn't want to create a big charity. The aim of transforming Teesside together is to create an environment where the church really works as one. So can we foster and encourage an environment where there's all sorts of great conversations and actions taken, and every now and again, I don't want to be too smug, but you see some things happening, and there'll be churches in that group over there, and they're working together, and there's a charity that's over there, and they're actually linking with this many different churches, and those two charities are starting to talk together, and you see those ministries. And actually, I think it's not that Transform Teesside Together has ever made that happen, but I do reflect that with over 9 years of doing this, we've created an environment where people know each other, they're thinking in a joined up way, and I think it has begun to kind of shift the automatic one church approach to things that was the reality for many, many years.
Yeah,
so,
amazing.
Yeah.
So how did people get involved with that? How did church leaders get involved? Did you go out and kind of press gang them, or go out and meet them, or kind of, or it was just kind of invite, or did people hear about it on the grapevine and think, I need a bit of that, or or both?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, totally both. And it took, like I say, I've been doing this now for 9 years, so it's not been a short, fast journey.
Yeah.
And actually, the pandemic, we'll talk about this a bit later, but the pandemic has set us back. And so we were in a different place pre-pandemic than we are now, and we've got to rebuild again. But yeah, it took slow time. I made a commitment to God probably about, when I was going through all this transition in my head and my own theology about whether I'm called to Colby Newham or to Teesside, that sort of thing. I made a commitment that I'd have a coffee with 2 leaders a week. Wow. And it's not huge, just an hour coffee with 2 leaders a week, so 2 hours out of my week. And I've done that for years and years and years. And actually, when you do that, you begin to get to know people.
Yeah.
And out of that, you get to share your heart. You get to share little bits of vision. Some people are on board straight away. That you're early adopters and they're like, I totally get this, and God's been saying this to me. Others, they needed to kind of build up trust. And kind of get to know you a bit, and then other things start to happen is when some leaders see 70 church leaders all in a room and they're talking strategy. That's an exciting thing, and there's not too many people that don't want to be a part of that. So it kind of a bit of FOMO, a bit of fear of missing out goes a long way.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, in a good way, absolutely.
Yeah, but I would also say, Dave, so a lot of what I do particularly has been with church leaders, obviously because I am a church leader. But there's a whole other side to this church unity vision that is actually so beyond church leaders, it's ridiculous. And that's if you start really thinking again logically that the church is one church, and we're on the same mission with God, then you start thinking, hey, so where's your church actually placed? Not your church buildings, but where are your Christians actually based? And we've got Christians placed in education, in healthcare. We've got them in, refuse, in the council, with local government. They're everywhere, aren't they? There are actually thousands of Christians all over Darlington, all over Middlesbrough, all over Stockton, who are scattered into those places. Now, I really believe that God has strategically scattered his people. That actually we need to move from the mindset that Jesus's church grows through our Sunday gatherings getting bigger. It grows through the fact that he has deliberately placed his people, in workplaces and homes, down streets and communities all the time. They're only in church for a couple hours a week, and they're all the time scattered out there on mission. And so the next logic I was thinking then, so if that's true, then God's also placed them with teammates. So Embrace Church, in your line of work, Dave, you might not have anyone else who's in your line of work who can kind of share the burden of that. But you know what? One of the blessings that, and you're into this already because you've been doing Unity stuff for a very long time and you know everyone, Dave. But one of the blessings that is actually you get to connect with other people who are in, they're Christians, they're on the same mission as you, but they might not go to Embrace. They go other places, and actually we need to learn to support each other, perhaps have networks of educators, networks of healthcare workers who are Christians, and really start saying together, hey, if God's got a vision for the transformation of all of schooling and education in Teesside, who's on the front line of that? That's not, church leaders are not going to help you with that vision, by the way. But if you get a load of educators, teachers, classroom assistants all together who are Christians and start really saying, hey, how do we work together to bring the kingdom of God across the education sector? So actually this is a long-term vision. So what happens if in 20 years' time, God gets his own way with the education sector in Teesside? I mean, what would that look like? That would be amazing. So how do we start to work? And that, Dave, that was the vision of Movement Day.
Right. Okay.
We wanted to get the Church of Teesside together, so we booked Middlesbrough Town Hall, which had about 1,300 seats, and the aim was to spend a weekend all together, 1,300 Christians from every denomination, and start talking this through and saying, hey, what sector do you work in? Well, you're not on your own. Let's pray. Let's strategize. Let's be on mission together. And it was all booked. We were selling tickets. We had guest speakers coming from all over the world who have been doing unity movements in India and Australia and America. Oh, Dave, we'd spent 2 years planning it. And it was supposed to be in June 2020, which was obviously at the height of the very first lockdown. And it was all cancelled. And I don't know what God was doing there with the timings. But now, it's kind of the vision's still there, the excitement's still there, the relationships are still there. But it's kind of put on hold, figuring out when are we able to do a gathering of 1,300 people again? I'm not sure. Still not sure.
Okay.
And also whether we go with a 1,300 person gathering again, or actually maybe we need to look at mini Movement Day events instead. So that's where we're at the moment. Still in the kind of dreaming up process of what's next for that.
Yeah. So I mean, I can't help, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm looking at, obviously whether people are making comments and they're not, and that's often a sign of they're not interested. It's just like amazing, just inspired by, like myself, I'm inspired by what you're talking about, Stephen. I knew I would be. I continue to be, and they're not making comments because I think we're just covering everything on here, and it's great and you can see the passion in you coming out for all this, and so. I know you went down to, if I remember rightly, it was a while ago now. Obviously, the pandemic has slowed things down, like you said, and you went to was it a London kind of conference about Movement Day, and there was that again inspirational then in terms of how you maybe see that affecting Teesside Movement Day and things like that?
Oh yeah, massively. Yeah. So we didn't invent Movement Day. What we discovered was, in fact, my dad's now heavily involved in this. At the same time, I was kind of going on this journey with Unity here in Teesside.
Yeah.
My dad was on a similar kind of mission. He was working for the Evangelical Alliance, and they had heard that just something was happening unity-wise all over the country, and for in a way that had not happened in their lifetime before. Churches were working together, not just evangelical churches, but across the spectrum. And so they asked my dad, "Would you travel around the UK and go and find out what's going on?" And so he travelled around, and that's exactly what he found. Exactly the same stuff that we've seen here in Teesside, and you're seeing now in Darlington as well, is happening all over the country. Now, I mean, all over that, I think it's 150 or 170 maybe now, towns and cities all over the UK have got an established unity movement, and they are having these same conversations as what we're talking about now. But that also wasn't just a UK thing, but all over the world as well. So as the UK scene started to get a bit organised, they started talking to the Americans, and obviously the Americans put money behind stuff as well. And so the Americans started putting on conferences to say, hey, what's happening unity-wise, and particularly in New York City. The churches there got very organised around gun crime. So there was more gun crime and more murders in New York City than there'd ever been before a few years ago. And the churches came together for the first time and said, this is happening on our watch. We're the church of the city, and this right now is one of the most dangerous places to live in the United States. And so they really came up with a vision. How do we work together to actually change these statistics that were going down? And so out of that, they started a conference called Movement Day, and it was always in New York, and it was about New York City, and it gathered the churches in New York City to talk about the future of New York. And so that model really then started to spread around the world, and they've happened now, Movement Days, seriously, all around the world, not an American, UK, Europe thing. It's Australia and India and Japan, Papua New Guinea. I was in Papua New Guinea a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Just amazing. And they were having a movement day in Port Moresby, which is one of the most dangerous cities in the entire world to be a woman in. Huge amounts of domestic violence and rape crime, things like that. And the church were gathering together for a movement day to say, hey, how do we as the church actually make a difference in some of these things? So that was kind of birthed. We held one in London. My dad organised it, and we held one in London to kind of really show what a movement day can do. And it gathered about 140 different towns and cities together to really say, there's something going on. It's amazing. It's a move of God. It's something that's new to our era. And let's start working out how do we push it forward. And we actually took 30 church leaders from Teesside down to London for that conference. And it was a really special moment, because what happened was we really, the vision really got embedded into a larger group of people, not just a few. And then we came back and started dreaming up, hey, what does this look like here? And that's how Movement Day Teesside was born out of those conversations, really. So I wasn't expecting us to be at this moment after a pandemic. I thought we would have moved. I really thought that 2020 and 2021 was going to be the biggest acceleration. So it really threw my plans, but now we're just really feeling it out and going, hey, God's not surprised here. So where's he leading us next? So we are in a slightly uncertain moment at the moment with it all, but the values are still there, and the dream is still there.
I mean, obviously, again, I'm going to use the word inspirational. God's on the move, definitely, and it's amazing to hear. Obviously, as you retell just how much that's happening around the world. It's not just an exclusive thing at all. God's moving across the world, making big differences. I wonder, do you know? Because you said some of the, like New York, for example, had a movement day, obviously a number of years ago now, and do you know what kind of impact that has? Because you talked about, crime, you talked about the, do you know the kind of strategies, actual practical things that churches did then out of that? Have you followed that up? If you don't, that's fine. I don't expect you to know everything about every single movement, Dave, whatever, but
Yeah, there are some great stories, and I've heard lots of them. The New York one with gun crime, it definitely shot down. I remember there is an amazing story. I just can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But there's other cities that I've heard of that have done. So I remember is it Charlotte, I think it is one of the most organised city movements there is, and they really started looking at they've got some big mega churches in Charlotte, which does help because it means you've got some resources there. But imagine the impact when you started uniting huge churches together and started asking the questions. And what the questions led them to was the actually education system in Charlotte was huge differences. There were some schools very high performing, obviously in the nicer areas, usually in the white areas, and then in the black areas, the huge racial divides in the States there. Schools were suffering and plummeting results. And they wanted to change that. And so what they did was they started getting groups of churches to adopt some of the worst schools in the city. And when you've got some churches with some big resources, they started making a huge difference.
Yes.
Started equipping students, equipping the schools, really talking with head teachers, saying, how do we bless? How do we serve you? And they saw some really measurable change in the actual hardcore results that the kids were getting in the schools because of that. So you got great stories within that, and there's other churches that have had church unity movements that have had evangelism strategies together. I was in Ottawa in Canada a few years ago as well. And they had a very organized alpha course strategy across all the churches. They did joint alpha advertising, had different locations, all the timings were worked out, and they monitored how many people were coming to Christ, and they really did it as the whole church, getting very organized with it. So that is actually part of the movement day vision, Dave, is actually you do try and look at what are measurable changes that you can begin to make. And you can't change everything, but actually I do think God puts things on people's hearts.
Yeah.
And so it's the question you've got to ask in Darlington really is there's some stuff that you are called to do as a local church, as Embrace Church.
Yeah.
But I also think there's some stuff you're called to do as the church in Darlington. And it doesn't mean stretch yourselves thin and try and do everything. But as a group of churches, this is what I'll be encouraging the guys to do when I'm with them in a couple of weeks' time. Start asking God, hey, is there one thing, even just one thing that we could start with that we could try and make a difference if we work together? And what are those things? How does that mean we maybe need to work out how we distribute resources? Maybe it means closing down certain ministries that are not fruitful at the moment and reinvesting it into a bit more of a strategic mission. So those sorts of conversations need to be had. Yeah,
challenging questions and challenging conversations.
Definitely.
What about obviously you've talked then about education, that immediately kind of gets my interest, being a teacher and many of, you kind of suggest the idea of educationists as an example, getting together and those kind of networking. Has anything like that happened just yet? In those kind of early kind of talks in Teesside and things like that?
No, that was the big plan for the Movement Day conference. Actually,
Movement Day, yeah.
We were splitting into streams. The idea is we had certain sessions that were all together, but then actually we split into different. We had different venues booked where we were going to split into streams and have some of the key different areas that could really make a difference, like education and business and healthcare and politics and things like that. So if we've got some influences and we've got some missional Christians placed in these sectors, how can they work together? So it's been talked about a lot, but no, not happened yet. So which is I am gutted about, but hopefully if we start talking again in a couple of years' time, we'll have some good things to share about that.
Absolutely. It's an exciting thing to think about, and again, it's inspirational to do just that. And, it's not as if people can well, obviously, just sit back and think it's all of this is about being proactive, isn't it? And taking it on board and grabbing it, and but you want to do that obviously in a coordinated and a strategy kind of manner, through church leadership and everything else, So,
yeah, that's it. But yeah. Church leaders do play a key role because they. I always want to. It's not all about church leaders, but they are the kind of key holders
Yeah.
to the Christian community.
Yeah.
And so we kind of need church leaders on board. But actually, I think that God's mission to see kingdom come. Actually, his strategy is not church leaders. His church leaders are to equip and to train and to release. But actually, his strategy is those guys he's got on the front line day in, day out. So it's every single one of you guys in your church and anyone who's listening to this. It's you, your God's kingdom strategy, and ways that you can move forward with this, even if even if there's no conference to attend yet, is just start keeping your eyes open for other Christians in your workplace, in your street. Even this could be based postcode wise. Hey, we're Christians based in the same postcode. What do we want to see happen here? It doesn't have to be workplace. Just have your ears open for that sort of thing, and don't rule them out because they're not from your church. If they might be from the Catholic Church around the corner, get your head around that. Hey, they're Jesus's person on Jesus's mission in the same land as you, and start sharing. Hey, I've got a heart for this. Have you got a heart for this? Hey, maybe we could pray about what we could do together and whether we could get other people together. I just think that the more that this the value of relational unity, getting to know each other, praying together, and then out of that trust that you develop through prayer, we can birth some sort of strategy. In fact, do you know what the Americans are great at is business leaders. They get business leaders together all the time. Christian business leaders in cities. They have fancy lunches together because they're business leaders. And I tell you what though, if they get together and start saying, hey, God's placed us in these positions. How does he want to use us for the good of our city, for the kingdom come vision? Now, I actually think we lack on this in the UK. I think most Christians who are in the workplace, whatever sphere they're in, quite often detach their career, their job, where they spend most of the time, from their calling. They think their calling is to invite people to church, which it is. Do please invite people to church. But it's more than that as well. God's given you a role and positions and relationships and influence, and you can use that to extend the kingdom of God. And he's also given you a team around you to do that with.
Yeah, amazing. So, I mean, as always, we're nearly at 5 to 9. The kind of hour's almost up, and it's gone so quickly. Again, I always say almost every episode. Really, we could just go on and on and on. I'm sure, and I'm sure you've got lots more that you want to kind of share with us and so on. But obviously, we're just going to limit it to that time. We won't go on and on and on. All right. So, Stephen, how can people find out more? Again, get in touch. I mean, I'm just going to head over in a moment. I've got, obviously some contact details that I've grabbed from the site, for example, and I'll put those on the screen in a moment. But I'm just conscious that, we obviously get a variety of people watching these live and then obviously catching up and things like that. And it may well be that, people almost might be part of a church and want to go, wherever and go to their church leader and say, watch this is amazing, what do you know about it already, and if you don't know about it, what are you going to do about it, that kind of thing, how do you, because this is God, this is church on the move, this is again, kingdom stuff, and so how can people get involved with, if obviously we're talking about Teesside mainly here, but how can they kind of do that really?
Well, I think particularly for you guys in Darlington, just back and encourage all the stuff that's going on church unity wise. I mean, I'm sure there's been a good history of unity in Darlington, but definitely over the past 3 or 4 years, it's stepped up a gear. And different church leaders are praying together and working together and have lunches together, which is wonderful. I'm going to be speaking to them in a couple of weeks. Pester your church leaders and make sure they know it's not just about them. That actually the vision is actually it's about Darlington. It's about the future of Darlington.
Yeah.
It's about what God wants to see happen in Darlington, and church leaders are a very small part of God's strategy. And so back it, encourage it, and start just living it. I think I really think that actually the best thing I ever did was what I said to you, is just have a couple of coffees a week with different church leaders. What if you did that within, if you're in education, Dave, what if you made a decision, even if obviously when you're full-time worker it's hard to do a couple of coffees, but maybe one coffee every 2 weeks with another person, another Christian in Darlington who's an educator. Do you know what, that would start to really encourage people. It would maybe begin to start a network up. I also just think, say after one coffee, Dave, if you had coffee with someone who's an educator, and the reason you were having coffee is because you're both Christians and you're both in education, I think you'd both go into work the next day with a different mindset, actually. I think it wouldn't just be, I'm back in work again today. It reminds you, I'm on mission. Jesus has sent me here.
Yeah.
And that little encouragement you've had from your brother or your sister, and that maybe the prayers that you've shared for each other, it kind of kickstarts you. So I think that's the most simple but most powerful thing to do. Have coffee with someone else who perhaps is in a similar sort of mission field as you are. Maybe they go to Embrace Church, maybe they don't, and start chatting and pray for them, commission them in what they're doing.
Fantastic. I'm just going to put your kind of contact details on here, Stephen. Just are these, obviously I've grabbed them from the site and things like that, so are these the best kind of contact ways to get in touch?
Yes, they are. Yeah, just bear in mind that everything has been a bit quiet over the pandemic because everyone's had to kind of hone in and focus in on their own churches. But actually, it is all changing right now. And so all of these, the website and the Twitter feed, it will all step up again a bit of a gear, and there'll be more activities happening that people can engage in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely worth, obviously we'll get, follow you on social media, etc., and go to the site just so you can keep yourself up to date, and obviously informed of anything that as it does kind of take place or, has been planning, and I'm sure you'll be sharing that kind of stuff. Like I say, I saw the pictures of church leaders praying together, the first physical one yesterday, wasn't it? So and again, it was just great to see that happening. That's inspiring, obviously, to know that churches are working together. But I love what you said earlier on, it's like, there's only one church, but then like you say, it's easy to say that. How does that look like when we start working it out? And it's so encouraging to hear that, how it's happening. Yeah. I'm sure there's more we can do.
Yeah. I'll just give a quick caveat though, Davis, is sometimes when if you take what I've just said seriously, we could overthink it and neglect the local church as well. And I definitely don't want that. The local church is hugely important. And the particular responsibilities you've got to your local congregation and your local mission field as a church, that's really important as well. Unity doesn't mean we do absolutely everything together, but I think it does mean that we know each other and we do things in relationship with each other. And then when those things that are worth doing together come up, then we're ready to do it and we're ready to move.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Stephen, I mean, like I say, I've really enjoyed this, and I'll say it again, there's not been any really kind of questions. People have loved it, obviously I'm just going to add a few of these things on here, the comments that people have been making earlier on, and, obviously all of this have really kind of, people have loved it. But I think it's just been amazing as people listen that they haven't, they haven't asked any kind of questions and things like that. But I'm not concerned about that, because, again, there's so much more we could talk about. You've made it so clear, and again, you're so passionate about everything there, which is, again, thank you for giving up your time tonight. I know how busy you are. I mean, you can tell how busy you are from, just the things that you're mentioning and so on like that. And I know leading a church, you don't just work on a Sunday, as people think that's the case, and so on, do you? Apart from that, you just do coffees by the sound of things. Is that right?
Do you know what? It's probably 90% of a church leader's job. It definitely is. No, but Dave, to honour you as well, Dave, is the reason I said yes immediately to this is because you've served the church at Teesside and Darlington for so many years, and you are a yes person. is you do all sorts. Is any event, anything, and anything I've ever asked you to do, you've always gone, yes, that's brilliant. And so I couldn't ever say no to you. So just to honour you and all of your service to Unity.
Yeah. Love to Leah and the family. Thanks for giving up your evening and everything, mate. And, just bless you in all that you're doing at Colby and beyond and so on. And I'm sure that if anybody wants to get in touch, then they can, obviously drop us a message, via the Embrace Church Facebook, and I can redirect them to you, so, Stephen or whatever. Or check out Colby Newham Baptist Church. Obviously, again, lots of fantastic stuff happening there. Follow the sites, follow the social media channels, so you can keep yourself up to date with the Transforming Teesside Together, Movement Day stuff, and everything else. Stephen, you're a legend. Thank you ever so much, mate.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you.
All right, take care. Thank you, everyone. See you next week for another Embrace Live. Thank you. Take care.